Sideline Squib. It's a long time coming. Steve, Andrew, what say you? This is the sideline, yeah. Funny, it's my time then. Put me in right now then. Squib, boy. This is the sideline, Funny, it's my time then. Yeah. Put me in right now then. Squib, boy. This is the Squib, info stick up to your ribs. Chips be coming with that dip. Go ahead, put it to your lips. My oh my, that is delish. Victory gon' taste like this. Y'all bought that big old boat, but these boys built you a bridge. Sit down and take notes. If you want you a trophy.
What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Sideline Squib. What's up, everybody, and welcome back. I don't know how my YouTube's on my phone's going at the same time. I'm trying to push out the Periscope during the intro, and I was a little late there. But welcome in. We're having fun already. It's a blast. We are with special guest, Dr. Edwin Porras. Did I do that right?
Nailed it.
Nailed it.
That shit.
Nailed it. The medical analyst for Fantasy Points and doctor of physical therapy. Edwin, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, man. I got my drink in my cup, ready to talk a little bit of fantasy football. We had a little good convo beforehand. So, man, that your guys' intro, who is that? That's good. You know who that sounded like? That sounded like Logic. Who was that?
That's Fantasy Man Bun, FF Man Bun.
Yeah. I need to follow him. I'm gonna follow that dude.
Gabe
dude. I'm assuming it's a dude. That's sexist. It's a dude, right? I just assumed.
It is a dude.
Yeah.
He is the host of or co-host of the Open Bar podcast as well. He does a lot of he's big on the TikTok scene, and he's done it was amazing.
He has gone viral.
Good for him.
Yes. Yeah, he did our intro. He also did our fellow podcast, the DFS Docket. He just did their intro as well. I think they just recently posted, well, maybe 2 or 3 episodes ago, a new one as well. So very
Fantasy Man Bun.
FF Man Bun, yeah. Gabe Gearing. Yeah, he's a talented. He does a lot. He does the diagnostics intro. He does a lot of people's intros. So definitely check him out as well.
And he's funny, man. He's a good follow. He's a really good follow. He's funny on Twitter. You can sense his sarcasm and his sense of humor just reading his tweets. So he's a good dude. Shout out the Open Bar Pod, by the way, in case anybody's looking for another thing to watch about fantasy football.
Yeah, Tuesday nights. That you want to talk about a fun podcast?
That one's fun.
It is literally they imitate the Open Bar. They sit around, usually a 6-pack of people, and you just sit there and drink and have fun and talk nonsense. Just football and everything put together.
There is no script in that one. That is just they are just drinking my cup type thing, and they had a couple of drinks in their cup before, so it's a good time.
That's cool. Yeah.
But Edwin, tell everybody a little bit about what you're about. Doctor of physical therapy. I mean, how did that come about? Where did that path lead you? And then how does that put you into the fantasy football world?
Yeah, man. So essentially, always loved fantasy football. Always loved the NFL. Always loved sports. We were talking about how we're all washed athletes, right? That's what we were talking about before we hit the record button. And I'm a washed athlete basically. And it led me down the path. I don't know why. I'm not going to pretend like I got some great epiphany of a moment where I said, oh, I want to be a physical therapist. Like I honestly, to 100% transparency, I lucked into this profession because I thought it looked cool on the outside. I got there on the inside and I said, holy shit, this is even cooler than I thought it was. So I really, really honestly, I'm extremely fortunate. I'm extremely blessed to be in the position I'm in. I'm the son of 2 Mexican immigrants, so I'm living the dream. That's like the absolute best part of that's the most proud, the proudest part of my entire existence, honestly. So I'm super proud of that. So it really has, and then the fantasy stuff, man, I'm just as fortunate because I talk a lot about the story about how Joe Dolan and the Fantasy Points team basically, when they were fantasy free agents this time last year, that they brought me on with, I had no experience. I had 200 Twitter followers. I had a shitty graphic. And they decided, and Ben Kukanis specifically, I think it's just at Ben Kukanis. He's the operating officer, the chief operating officer. Basically, he does everything for us. He's literally like, he does the marketing, he does all the meetings, he puts out all our Twitter content. Like he's literally does everything. He's like a Swiss Army knife. I don't think the guy sleeps. but he just decided to bring me on last year to their podcast, their weekly podcast with the fantasy free agents. And then eventually like coerced John Hansen and Joe Dolan to keep me on as a medical analyst. And then since then, you know, I've built sort of a relationship with all the people, and they're all great dudes, all of them. But it's part hard work because I did put in a lot of work to it, but I can't deny that I'm just fortunate. I was fortunate to be in the right time at the right place. And I reached out to Ben when I did, and it's turned into where I'm at now. So now I have this Twitter at FB Injury Doc, growing that. And then I also recently started a podcast, which is the Injury Prone Fantasy Football Podcast, a little play on words, a little inside joke with people who've been following me since day one, since I basically said, my Twitter bio says Injury Prone is a lie. So check that out. I would love if any of you guys, this is the last little self plug. If any of you guys have ever benefited from anything I've said or like the content, I would really appreciate if you'd go and give the Injury Prone Fantasy Football Podcast a 5-star review. All right, that's enough self promotion. That's enough about me.
Oh no, promotion is what we're all about.
No, that's why we got you on here, man. Because I want people to know who you are too. That's why I reached out to you. That's why I wanted you on our podcast, because I take a benefit from the work that you put in and the knowledge that you share just on your Twitter feed. So I can only imagine what the podcast is like and how much information you're able to spread out and go into more detail with. So
I appreciate it.
Promote. That's what we're here for, man. That's what we're here for.
Yeah, so a little bit of player news is kind of coming down the wire as we speak here. It looks like Dalvin Cook is reporting. He told teams and officials that he will be reporting, which I'm pretty sure we were all on board with. With a new CBA, he kind of would have lost a year going in. So that's good news for Vikings fans and for Dalvin Cook owners. But the big trade going down, Jamal Adams, I know it's not fantasy relevant to a sense, but looks like the Jets just loaded up on some first-round picks, moving Jamal Adams to Seattle. What are you guys' thoughts on that?
I think it was a perfect price to pay if you're Seattle. I know everybody's going to look back and say, wow, 2 firsts. But that's pretty much the price you pay, man. I mean, if you want a stud in today's day and age, that's what you're paying for. Jamal Adams went for 2 first-rounders and a player. Stephon Diggs went for a first and a third. I mean, Fitzpatrick went for a first rounder. Brandon Cooks went for a second rounder. You know, that's the price you're paying. And Jamal Adams is well worth, I think, 2 first rounders, especially if you're considering Seattle to be a contender, which anytime they have Russell Wilson out there, they should be considered a contender. So, you know, it should be late first round picks. And I think it's something that you have to maximize the window for Russell Wilson and that core group.
Yeah, man. The NFC West is stacked, right? Like any of those teams could come out and you would call them at least a contender for the NFC Championship at least, right? I mean, maybe the Rams to a lesser extent, the Cardinals to a lesser extent, but still, though, even those teams can play with the Seahawks and with the Niners. You know, they can hold their own. So I think this is a good trade, obviously, for Seattle. I think it means a lot. For Jamal Adams, obviously his Instagram was lit, right? He was literally, it was a party. So you can't forget, like, and that's the one thing that I always bring around. People probably get tired of me saying it. I always bring it back to humanizing these dudes, right? We play a fantasy game and we're constantly saying, oh, buy, sell, trade, asset, you know, this and that. But we really need to remember this is these guys' livelihood. This is, I mean, we were talking about being athletes beforehand, and think about how much, you know, you were 16, 17-year-old kid. All of us were, if we played sports, and that was your entire identity, right? And we had literally no identity outside of that. A lot of us, maybe not every one of us. We had no identity outside of sports. Well, imagine extending that another 10 years into adulthood to where this is their entire livelihood in their life. And the fact that he didn't even find enjoyment in it anymore and was so excited to get out of there, I think it speaks a lot to where he was. And it speaks a lot to where he, you know, maybe his play is better this year. Who knows? You know, it's just, I think it's super important to always humanize these people.
100%.
Yeah, it's almost like he'll be in a place where he wants to be. He's not going to have that pressure coming on. I mean, he's a great defensive player, and hopefully that the attitude adjustment and kind of, you know, I'm all about players speaking out and speaking their mind. But like, what's going on? What do you think's going on in that locker room? I mean, we all know about Adam Gase and the complications that he may bring. Talking about Le'Veon Bell and Chris Herndon had issues with him. What do you think's going on there? And kind of with the trade, the assets that the Jets and New York got back, what do you think that does for like we talked about, the leash of Adam Gase going forward?
I would imagine that the locker room atmosphere, everybody's locker probably comes stocked with smelling salts, I'd assume, and they just party it up. No, I don't know. I mean, Adam Gase is a weird dude. I've seen plenty of his interviews and his I mean, he's a weird cat, man. And I think him being in New York in that kind of spotlight is really, I think it's kind of gone to his head a little bit. And Jamal Adams isn't like some quiet dude either. You know what I mean? Like when you get those, and Le'Veon Bell isn't a quiet guy. So like, I don't know, you get too many personalities in one room, and if it's not successful, then you're going to have a lot of this. You're going to have a lot, and now with all the access to social media and all that stuff, like people are much more accessible to voicing their opinion or their displeasure, either directly or indirectly, through social media and through the media itself. So to your point with humanizing these people, think about where he's going from New York to Seattle. Like he's going, moving a whole family, right? Or, his whole livelihood clear across the map. You talk about like from the COVID situation, from a lockdown situation, it's not like it's going to be any different from New York to Seattle because they're both in those lockdown scenarios. But that brings up a point as we move closer to the season and closer to actually into these camps and stuff, like Mostert, for example, who's demanding a trade, and players like that. The further we get along in the offseason and closer to the actual season, the less likely these trades are going to happen because of the logistics of actually getting that player there and how soon you'd be able to use that player. Like if somebody gets traded, from one state to another, they're not exempt from being like not part of a quarantine or not part of, so they're whether they test positive or not, because they were in the area that requires them to be tested or requires them to be quarantined now, that plays a factor. I think so many things are going to be different this year, and that's just another layer. But I just think, to your point, as far as humanizing and like realizing that players' lives are actually being uprooted and changed with a trade is something to point out. And I don't know, moving forward, it just seems less and less likely, even for the NFL.
Yeah, and I think we're in a situation here where the NFL is kind of sitting in a good backseat, if there's a way to sit in the backseat, because you have the MLB started up, and so far, their protocols and everything from a fan's perspective. I don't know all the inside. Hopefully, Edwin can give us some more insight on this a little bit. But from a fan side of the things, MLB is they're doing testing before every game. We've already seen multiple players. We're only 2 days. What's today? Saturday. 3 days in officially into the MLB season. And you've seen multiple players get tested or even have symptoms without testing positive, and they're automatically off, quarantined, 10-day IL, and they're taking those precautions per day and per case, I guess, as it is. And then the NBA or WNBA started up. NBA starting up on Wednesday or Thursday. So I think the NFL is going to have a few weeks to kind of sit back and see what's happening and how they handle the players, coaches, staff, and all that going forward. But we did. You talked about changes. Things are going to happen so much this year that's so uncommon, and that's going to also change our fantasy lineups and whatnot. I mean, Andrew, the Chiefs just had a player, the first player to opt out of the 2020 season. Good luck with saying his name because I'm way out on it. But
Duvernay Tardif.
Yeah. Duvernay Tardif was the first player to opt out. And who's next? Some of these guys, yes, they're athletes. Yes, they're professional performers if you want to look at it from our side of things. But you got to think, they're still people. They still have families outside of football. They still have livelihoods, kids, real life problems. I mean, you're talking, we don't know what is going on. I mean, what if somebody's wife is, has an immune adjustment or some sort of medical issue, or their kids are extra immune, or whatever the sort, they it's not worth it for them to play and bring it home to their families or travel or vice versa or whatever is going to happen. So, Edwin, I don't know if you've caught any of the MLB or WNBA, how they just started up, but what do you think about their protocols, and what do you think the NFL should do or are going to do going forward about to handle the situation of COVID-19?
Yeah. So I think the first thing we got to point out that's super important is that, clearly Dr. Fauci doesn't want anybody to catch anything, right?
Right, right, right.
Like I can't take
I'm
credit
telling
for
you,
that. That was on
I'm
Twitter.
telling you, that has to be intentional. When people go out there and look that bad, like
I don't know.
you know in advance that you're gonna be throwing like, he looked like he never thrown a baseball before. Like,
I mean, he looked like he's in good shape, right? But he looked like he's in good shape, but he is in his 70s, right? Because I think a lot of us. So maybe that's like us maybe underestimating or overestimating our own abilities. But dude, that's a long way to throw a ball fast, and maybe he was trying to look like he was throwing. I don't know. Who knows? Anyway, I had to make that joke.
But even at that point, you could 3-hop it from the mound to the plate if you really wanted to.
Towards the plate, if it falls short, I'm not gonna be upset. But dude, that almost hit the non-existent fans in the fans.
That was the 50 Cent like pitch. You got to admit it, right? And it's all right. It's all right. He's still number one in our hearts. Dr. Fauci, good guy. So, but what I was gonna say is, relative to the MLB, relative to the NBA and NFL. So, specifically speaking, the NBA, right? They have this bubble, right? And it sort of was a joke. We sort of laughed at the idea of a bubble, but that is the way to ideally do this. And we talk about these people who are human. We talk about these people who, they have lives outside of football. They have lives outside of their sport. And you have to think about a lot of these dudes come from a situation where now they're taking care of they're taking care of theirs. They got their family to take care of. They got their grandmas, their moms, their uncles, whatever. And a lot of times, like you said, that could come with people who are immune compromised. It can come with people who maybe are a part of their life who are living recklessly and aren't protecting themselves as much, and they're asymptomatic carriers. You got all these situations, and then you got a 53-man roster. And this 53-man roster isn't in a bubble, right? They're living potentially, who knows how they're living. There are fringe guys who, maybe they get their second or third check of the season and they just check out and they say, F this. I mean, I'll be here, but I'll collect the checks, but I don't care about protecting anybody else. We think about all the stars. We think about the skill players. We think about the quarterbacks, but it's these foot soldiers who are on, only punt return, who they're the magic key in this, right? Because these dudes aren't dumb, right? The skill players aren't dumb. The quarterbacks aren't dumb. The running backs aren't dumb. They're not going to be the ones out partying at different cities because they know they'll get, they'll end up on Instagram or Twitter or something. And they know that. So they're right. So they're not going to be out. It's these other dudes that we don't recognize that are going to be the key to this. And it's really difficult. And I know that we all are telling ourselves like, there's going to be a season. We're preparing for it. I'm preparing for it. I'm putting articles out. I'm putting content out. I'm still 1 foot in, 1 foot out. I don't know. And I'm not convinced there actually will be a season, or if there is a season, because of all the things that I just mentioned, because all the risks that come associated with it, not being in a bubble, 53 men, 53 times 32, that's hard to manage, guys. And if we do see a season, I don't think it's going to be unlike any other season. We're going to be having literally like Kalen Ballage is going to be the RB1, one of these weeks. Like it's going to happen. It's just going to happen. And that's just the reality of where we're at.
Yeah. To even exasperate that even further, you're talking about 53-man roster. You're talking about coaches, the staff, the people that handle the yard markers, the TV crews. Like there's a lot of people that are involved, and their families, right? So like them and then their families, where their families have been, and if they've brought home, the COVID and expose them to it, like the whole chain of events at that point, and where they've traveled, who they've been in touch with, and all those kind of things. Like, you're right, man. It just exponentially grows and can become very uncontrollable, which just kind of like why we're in our situation we're in. Like it's actually at a minor or a smaller sample than what we're dealing with, obviously worldwide and nationwide. So, but when you start breaking it down like that, it starts to get like, holy shit, like it's kind of scary.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a challenge, not only for the players, but for the coaches, for the staff, for the GMs, for everybody. And, overall, I've been looking for a new challenge myself, which is why I'm playing Dynasty Owner Fantasy Football this season. Edwin, I don't know if you've checked them out yet or not, but Dynasty Owner Fantasy Football unites the fun and excitement of fantasy football with the skill and strategy of the front office. Dynasty Owner is the only way to play fantasy football with real NFL salaries, adding the strategy of running an NFL franchise. Dynasty Owner provides a unique challenge for diehard fantasy football fanatics. So swing over to dynastyowner.com/squib. Leagues are forming now. That's dynastyowner.com/squib. We've all been in a league where the winner just got lucky. If you're like me and you know you're better than the most, Dynasty Owner gives you the platform to prove it. Dynasty Owner favors skilled players who can manage their roster using NFL salaries within the salary cap, and it adds such a different dynamic. I was actually on the Dynasty Owner podcast earlier this week. It is up on YouTube if anyone wants to go check it out. It is completely different process. You want to talk about mind blown. I went to school for sports management and business administration. You know, that's right up my alley. I'm so excited. So I talked to Tim Peffer over there, the owner, creator of Dynasty Owner. I got into a league. Actually, live draft was last weekend. There's still players on the board like Carson Wentz and Dak Prescott. Like, it is such a different dynamic to the league. It takes fantasy football and turns it into a whole different game, because now you're worrying about contracts, you're worrying about salaries, you're worrying about so many different things that, like, I'm a Jonathan Taylor fan, don't get me wrong. When I drafted Jonathan Taylor in the second round at like 206, I thought I was going to throw my computer across, but now I'm like, oh, that saves me money to get someone like Mike Evans later. I mean, it is such a different dynamic, and Andrew and I are actually coming up. Let's hope it wasn't today. No, let's hope it wasn't today. I think it got pushed back to next weekend, but we'll be in an expert league. So a lot of big names going into that. You got Dynasty Happy Hour, Dynasty Trade, Calculator, Fantasy Points, Fantasy Pros. A lot of big names that's going into that. It's going to take some strategy, but you're right. I mean, it's going to be a challenge for anybody, and to overcome this and to be a GM or even a coach in this scenario, you're gonna have to change your game plan on the fly. You're gonna really have to be able to call an audible as a coach and be like, okay, Patrick Mahomes got tested positive today. We're not going to have him for the next 2 weeks, or whatever the protocol is for the NFL, you know? So now we're bringing in, I can't even tell you who's the dude from the XFL. They'll bring
PJ Walker.
No, they don't have him. He's in Carolina, right?
Who's the quarterback?
Who did the Chiefs have?
Yeah.
Timu. Ole Miss, yeah. Tiamu.
You'll be bringing him in. You know what I mean?
I think he already got cut. I don't think he's on the team.
So it's going to be absolutely it's going to be an absolute different season to manage, not only in real life but also as fantasy owners. And Edwin, that's why we kind of wanted to get you on, because we wanted to get your take not only on the whole COVID thing, because who knows where that's going to take the season, but we also have a lot of pre-existing injuries or injury questions that we over at Sideline Squib, the staff, everybody there, had some questions that we kind of put together to ask you as well. If you're down for that, we'd love to ask you a few questions, kind of sit in your chair and see your opinion on some players, some big name players.
Yep.
So Andrew, what do you got for?
Give him the easiest one.
Softball.
Go for it.
Softball.
So we already kind of touched on him because he's reporting to camp, but Dalvin Cook, how concerned are you with him re-injuring his shoulder? Would you pay his? I guess I'll rephrase this. Is your concern level high enough that you are not willing to pay his ADP like myself?
Was his ADP 5? Is that where we're at?
5, 6, 7, somewhere in there. Yeah, like RB 3 or 4, somewhere in there.
Is Kamara off the board?
So it would be in most scenarios at this point, and I think I don't have the ADPs as of today, but it's looking usually like CMC, Barkley, Zeke,
okay,
Kamara, Cook, whoever's flavor you like more, I guess.
I'm taking Kamara first.
100%, absolutely. Yeah,
those are the dudes I'm taking. I might even take Michael Thomas first. It's hard because he's such a talented freaking player, and I feel like when I talk about his risk, which I can get to in just a minute, when I talk about his risk, people are like, yeah, but when he's on the field, he does this and does that. Trust me. I've watched Dalvin Cook with my eyes, and he's a good football player, and I 100% understand that.
Hashtag good.
He's hashtag good at football.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is he's dislocated his shoulder 4 times since high school, 4 or 5 times that we know of. There's a 5th that I never confirmed because it was like a random like high school newspaper, and they like said something about his shoulder. Never confirmed it. Who knows? At least 4 times. He's had surgery on 1. He dislocated the left last year, And when you dislocate your shoulder, so he was literally the poster child for this statistic that I'm about to give, right? So there's a study that came out, and it showed 41% of NFL players who had a shoulder dislocation in college but didn't have surgery ended up dislocating again. 41%, right? 10.5% who had shoulder dislocation in college and did have surgery ended up dislocating again. So he fell into both of those buckets. He dislocated one shoulder, his right shoulder, had surgery, and he's yet to dislocate the right shoulder that we know of. But the left one, he dislocated, and now we're waiting to see what the result is. You also have to look at the studies that show on NFL players specifically that when players dislocate their shoulder, there's a 40 in the NFL, there's a 40 to 55% chance that they do it again, right? The more that he dislocates that shoulder, the more times that happens, the more likely he is to need surgery, right? He didn't have surgery this time. And the problem is that there's like a 55% redislocation rate in NFL players if you don't have surgery. And if he does it again, there's a chance, best case scenario, right? So this is the best case scenario for Dalvin Cook. He did redislocates his shoulder in week 10. He comes back in week 13 or 14, and then he plays the rest of the season. That's best case scenario, right? So basically the playoff hunt. You might lose him during the playoff hunt, right? You could lose him week 1. You might lose him during the playoff hunt. Worst case scenario for Dalvin Cook, he takes a handoff in week 2, redislocates his shoulder, suffers too much damage for physicians to ignore, and they're like, dude, you need surgery now. And he's out for 9 months, right? So that's the volatility. I don't like to look at players in terms of, are they a risk? Should I take them at ADP or not? That's up to you. That's up to the fantasy player. Like, if you are a dude who can take, or a girl who can take a lot of risk on your fantasy teams, draft Dalvin Cook at 3, draft him at 2, whatever.
Why not? I stop there. Go ahead.
Exactly. Take him over CMC. But my point, and sorry for this long-winded answer, my point here is that his volatility, his range of outcomes are wider than any of the other top running backs that you potentially have. And could he end the season healthy? Absolutely. But is there also a greater chance that he ends it early, completely, and misses like 15 weeks compared to other running backs? Absolutely.
Yeah, I think you nailed it on the head with the volatile word or verbiage there, because you hear the term used a lot or thrown around in the stock market, and that's kind of exactly what he is. At his ADP price of 5, 6, RB3, 4, wherever you want to go with it there, you're taking that validity of Dalvin Cook and his injury concerns and throwing it out there of, hey, I'm going to go risk it all and get this stock out there, or get this player that's going to pay off big time in the end, with the chance of really, really hurting me and losing it all. Or I could bypass that and kind of stick for a medium stock, kind of less validity, and ride that out for the season. So I agree with you there on Dalvin Cook. And don't get me, I don't even want to get started on Alexander Madison, because
that's
the love affair I have for him is.
Yeah. Yeah.
I take Alexander Madison in the fantasy points league. I'm in a bunch of sharps. I'm looking at Graham Barfield, Joe Dolan, Tom Broley, like John Hansen. I literally was upside. I took Alexander Madison in like the 7th round or something. Like, I needed something, because these dudes are just, it doesn't even matter how much research I would have put into it. They were going to outdraft me. So I just the entire time I was just looking for upside. I took Lamar Jackson in like the 3rd too.
You're like drafting a DFS team for
basically. Exactly.
Like, listen, I need low ownership. I don't care what price I'm paying.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. I'm with you on Dalvin Cook. So like, I called. So one of our first ever shows on the Sideline Squib was kind of our preseason preview, like where we thought teams were going to finish. Player awards, those kind of things. And I last year was saying Dalvin Cook could win the Comeback Player of the Year award because he was coming off of injury then. And he had an outstanding year and probably could have won it as well. So I'm not anti-Dalvin Cook. I'm anti-Dalvin Cook as the first 5 picks in a dynasty startup. Like, I just can't do it. Like, or redraft for that matter, because I like volatility. I play fantasy sports. I'm in the stock market. I play DFS. I enjoy the risk. I'll take the risk because it's fun. But I'm not doing that in the first round. Like, I need some sort of baked in floor for me, safety net for me, and to be spending my first round draft pick on them. And even so, even early in the second, I'm still kind of in that same boat. The further we get in the draft, sure, I'm shooting upside, but I'm not taking Dalvin Cook over Kamara. I'm not taking Dalvin Cook over Zeke. I'm not taking Dalvin Cook over Miles Sanders. I'm not taking Dalvin. Like, I can't I can't embrace that risk knowing what you just said. Like, he could be done, has a 55% chance of re-injuring at some point in the year. And it's not like he plays quarterback. It's not like he plays even wide receiver. Right. He plays a position where even when he's not getting the football, he's embracing contact. He's in pass pro, he's, and then whenever he does get the football, he's going to be contacted, like it's just going to happen. And, and
last time he did, I'm going to interrupt you because you made a good point. The last time that he dislocated his shoulder, it was in pass protection during spring practice at Florida State.
Yep. And so like that's where I'm at, like, on that. So I can't embrace that kind of volatility that early on in the draft. So that's why I gave you the layup of Dalvin Cook, because that's the one I wanted to agree with you on. So now we can disagree on every single one.
There you go.
I've built in some equity.
There you go.
All right. So we all saw what Hollywood Brown, Marquise Brown in Baltimore has done so far after his Liz Frank injury, stating that he is not back 100%. Which is kind of scary because he still put up those boom or bust plays in that Lamar Jackson Baltimore offense as it is right now, offensive scheme. What are your thoughts on Deebo Samuel? What do you expect from on a timeline return from his Liz Frank injury, and should we expect a slow start even when he comes back?
So just a small correction, right? And I'm not calling you out because these are hard. These are really similar injuries, but they're not the same.
Oh, he had a Jones. Didn't he have a Jones?
Yeah, he had a Jones, and right. Marquise Brown had a Liz Frank.
That's right.
The difference is that the Jones fracture that Deebo Samuel had, it's a fracture of that long bone that leads to your pinky toe. It's right on the outside of your foot. So those are extremely common injuries among first through third year wide receivers. Super common, right? The problem is they're super volatile also. You can have essentially what's called union, right? So just exactly what it sounds like. The bone comes back together. It heals. Everything looks good. CT's clear. Symptoms look good. And players can go out there and refracture it. It's a weird phenomenon. They're still trying to figure it out. There's still a lot of research being done on why that might be. But the point is that even if he has a completely uneventful recovery, and let's say he's ready by week 1, which is there's a chance that he's ready by week 1. Let's say that all that happens, week 1, he could refracture. That's just the bottom line. We don't know why, but that's, it is what it is, right? I think that at this point, and I haven't looked at his ADP yet, he's a player that I'm willing to swing for the fences on. I know that it's hard. I know that Scott Barrett over at Fantasy Points, he said that he's not necessarily out on Deebo Samuel, but he's not like bought in either. So that's given me a little cause for hesitation. But Deebo Samuel is just like this ultra athlete, right? He's like one of the dudes that's like, he's sort of I wouldn't say blazing the path because there are a lot of other dudes like him, but he plays positionless football, right? He gets handoffs out of the backfield. He'll run bubble screens, whatever. Like, he sort of does it all. And there's a lot of value to that if he's touching the ball. So anyway, I think that his ADP has fallen enough to where I'd be willing to take him. But at the same time, you have to consider that even if he does come back and he's ready by week 1, he is at a higher level of risk than other players around him in that same range.
Yeah, and I think the way he plays as well, kind of as that rover, that X-back, that do-it-all athlete there on that team, it's going to be weird. I think I was reading a report that takes somewhere from 4 to 8 weeks, which is a weird span or a weird window there. Is that correct? Edwin, somewhere like that to return in quotes, but not be fully healthy?
You're talking about Deebo still?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I don't know about the 4 to 8 weeks necessarily. Okay. There's a study that came out and it showed in NFL players that there's a sort of a weird delineation that we've found the statistical significance in. As soon as they get to 10 weeks, that's like the delineation point. If they come back before 10 weeks, then they are at a really, really high risk to re-injure. And let me find the study and I can quote it. If they come back after 10 weeks, that significant difference drops and they have a lot less of a chance of refracturing the Jones fracture. So the 4 to 8 weeks is when he's probably already sort of started. He might be straight line walking without a boot at this point. He's sort of getting to the point now where he is beginning to turn a corner. He's not quite there yet. But essentially what I'm trying to say is that the 10-week mark will really say a lot. Where he's at 10 weeks will say a lot about where he'll be, in week 12, 13, 14.
Oh, that makes complete sense. Look, that takes us, into week 2, week 3-ish. So keep an eye on week 2, week 3 of the NFL season for Deebo to see if he makes that turn and see if he can put full pressure and get full mobility on that foot as well, coming back from his injury. All right, let's move on to another wide receiver here, because he's one that kind of came out of nowhere. Preston Williams, he has a chance to be the number one in Miami. He's young enough, he's talented enough, coming off of his.
He is the number one in Miami.
Yeah, he is the number one. If you know Devontae Parker fan for the 7th year in a row, 8th year in a row, but. What are the chances that he's 100% good to go start of the season and coming off his second ACL injury in his career?
Yeah, that's the tough part that you just mentioned is the second part. So the average return to sport for players after an ACL injury is about 10 months. The standard deviation, that's about 2 months. So anywhere between like 8 and 12 months. Since it is the second one and it's a really vague report, I don't know, because his last one was either high school or college, I believe. And those are always really vague in the description of what side it was. So I don't know if it's the same side or a different side, but essentially that does not help his case. He's super young and super talented, so that always helps. Draft capital always helps. Talent always helps. I know he was undrafted, I think, but that was because of some off the field issues.
Correct.
But essentially what I'm trying to say with him is that I don't know how high, I don't know what his ADP is. I'd have to look. But I think that at some point he becomes a screaming value because, like you guys were saying, he's just such a talented dude. And
he's going against wide receiver 23 right now.
I might take that. I probably would take that.
Sorry. I'm so sorry. So sorry.
No, it's good.
It's going as that is his age, in case you guys are wondering.
That makes sense.
Goodness.
I'll let you look for it. But what I was going to say is, did you find it?
Wide receiver. So he's going as wide receiver 53.
That makes more sense.
And
114
overall.
So I would definitely take him at that price. He's just got so much upside, right? And the one thing that Scott Barrett has done to me since we have conversations about this stuff, he's really convinced me that you guys should read his stuff over at fantasypoints.com if you haven't. It's legitimately really good stuff. He talks about drafting for upside and how essentially you should look for upside. Obviously, mitigate your risk when you can, but drafting for upside is what wins championships. And I feel like Preston Williams falls into that bucket. He's a young talent. He showed us what he could do last year. And there's also a study on, let's see here, let me find it. So there was a study done in 98 combine participants. They're ages between 20 and 26. They had a history of an ACL tear. They all matched. So they matched 98 of these combine participants with an ACL tear with somebody who is the same size, the same position, everything. And they look and didn't have an ACL tear, right? Essentially what they found was that their 40 times were no different. Their vertical leaps were no different. Their broad jumps were no different. So their physical athleticism, if they tore their ACL between the ages of 20 and 26, did not change, which is kind of crazy, right? Because that's not how we view it. Now, it's nuts, right? So you also have to adjust for draft capital, obviously. You're not comparing a 6th rounder to a 1st rounder, but Preston Williams is in that upper echelon. And even if he comes back, let's say he was going to be, I'm not saying this is the case. Let's say he was going to be Mike Evans, right? Or something crazy like that. I would take it if now he's a consistent Devontae Parker, not to use somebody on his team. Like if he was a consistent Devontae Parker, we would probably take that, right? If he was a consistent, who's another lower tier guy, but still good, we'd probably still take that. We would take anything that basically is consistent and provides production. I think that Preston, who's that?
Jarvis Landry.
Would you take Jarvis Landry? Absolutely,
Robert
right?
Woods,
Robert Woods, all those dudes.
Never get enough pub.
Exactly. So, Keenan Allen, another dude, maybe. I would take that. And I think that's the boat that he's currently in. I think he can still be a productive NFL wide receiver. It is a little bit of a risk that he's had 2 ACL tears. At this point, that might indicate something different, something bigger underlying maybe. But at his ADP, I think that's fine.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think it's funny that you used Devontae. I know you weren't trying to, but it's funny that you used Devontae Parker and said if he was a consistent Devontae Parker. Well,
Right, yeah.
if Devontae Parker was consistent, we would take that too.
Exactly.
Get everything we want.
Yeah.
Devontae Parker is what he is. I can't get on board with what his is considered his 5th year, 6th year, whatever, a 5-year breakout, a 5th year breakout as a wide receiver.
Huh?
Yeah, I can't get on board with that. And he wasn't even breaking out until Preston Williams got hurt. So it's like,
right.
I can't get on board. And the fact that Preston Williams is likely going to be back at some point in 2020, whether that's at the beginning of the year or whether they limit his snaps or they ease him back in, all those kind of things obviously play a factor. But like drafting a dynasty team, like you said, even still, I'm still looking for upside. I'm still looking for that kind of production potential. And if I'm faced with taking Devontae Parker or taking Preston Williams, I'm going to take the guy who still has tread on his tires and was already breaking out long before his 5th year in the league, and potentially can be paired up with one of the best quarterbacks potentially in football if Tua is healthy and can be consistent and all those kind of things. So a lot of things obviously go into that whole evaluation of who you're going to take, but at wide receiver 53 or pick 114, like that seems like tremendous upside value for a wide receiver that could potentially be the wide receiver 1 on an offense that should be throwing quite a bit.
Absolutely.
So we're back and forth with Deebo and Preston Williams. Hopefully they both stay healthy this year for fantasy value purposes. I want to jump into a quarterback now. Edwin, can you give us a little insight on Tommy John surgery? I know it's a common occurrence in more of the MLB or baseball type injury, but Big Ben, 38 years old, coming off of Tommy John surgery. First, tell us a little bit about what Tommy John surgery is and how that affects a quarterback and his throwing motion, but also what's your level of concern for his fantasy outlook along with the wide receivers in Pittsburgh now?
Yeah, so it's a good question. The thing about Big Ben, and this is a really interesting caveat that not a lot of people knew. So again, I'm not calling you out on this stuff. This stuff is like confuses me sometimes because of the reports. He actually he didn't have a Tommy John. He had what's called a primary repair. So instead of replacing the ligament itself, what they did is they just resutured and fixed the actual ligament, his own ligament. Otherwise, they get it from like your leg or maybe the opposite side of your arm or something like that, in your toe. Sometimes, like your feet, they'll just replace it completely. They just sewed his back up. According to all the reports, that's what it seems like they did. The problem with that is it's not tried and true. Tommy John is like one of the most progressive, successful, one of the best orthopedic surgeries that we have in medicine. It uses so much, like there's so much data behind it that shows that it's just a good procedure. Pitchers come back and they have all these their numbers are like off the charts. When they get back, they're better, right? So the primary repair, not as much data. I'm not saying that it's bad, right? Like if I were to tell you, I'm going to send you to like this gourmet pizza shop and it's got like 4.8 stars and 3,000 reviews on Google, right? And you're like expecting this really good pizza, and because everybody else on earth has reviewed it that it's really good, you'd probably be pretty comfortable with that, right? Like the flip side is if I sent you to like this local, like this hole in the wall, right? In like downtown Kansas City or something. And, there were like 100 reviews, or there were like, there just wasn't as much pub behind it, you'd be a little more skeptical. And that's sort of how I view the Tommy John versus the primary repair. Can he come back and be successful? Absolutely. Like he can, but there's just not as much data to show that it's as successful as the Tommy John.
I did not know that I did not know. We've been saying Tommy John for like 4 months now.
No, I did too.
That's why
I did too. Don't worry. In the beginning, I did too.
But that's perfect. That's why we wanted you on, because
good stuff. I didn't know that.
We do not know. Trust me, that's the last thing. Last thing I know about anything is.
And honestly, that's like the nuts and bolts. So it's not even like, I'm not saying it's not important, because it is. I guess it is for fantasy purposes. It matters because he is more volatile than he would be if he had a Tommy John. And it's not so much that he can't. Again, it's not that he can't be successful and can't come back and be better. There just is not as much data showing that it won't re-rupture and that he won't come back and be better with the primary repair. It's just more unknown. If he would have had a Tommy John, I'd be sitting here saying pitchers throw faster, they throw fewer walks. They can, they have whatever, like their ERA is better, whatever. Like you could say all those things if it were the Tommy John. I can't say that with the primary repair.
Why did he choose? Is there an option? Could he have chosen Tommy John instead of?
He could have, and it would have made his recovery, potentially would have made his recovery longer. Tommy John surgeries typically take about, they can take between 12 and 19 months, whereas the primary repair takes it shaves 2 months off. So 10 to 16 or something like that. It still would have been a long recovery for him, but the surgeons basically presented it to him and they said, you can do this. We can pretty much tell you this is the path that you're going to go down, or you can get a Tommy John. It's tried and true. It'll last longer. So it's almost like he had a choice between, we can prep you for the next 1 to 2 years quickly, or we can, repair you. It'll take longer. It'll be a longer rehab. But your elbow in the end will be better. At 38 years old, I can understand why he made, if they're in win now mode, right? I can understand why he made that decision.
Okay. Obviously his personal choice. So at the end of the day, it's, we don't know actually all the details. We can only go off of what you're saying, from studies and stuff. That's interesting. Would you say over or under 4,500 yards for Big Ben this year?
Dun, dun, dun.
This has got to be over, right? I mean, they throw 700 times a year, but again,
5,000.
Yeah, he's got to stay healthy, and I cannot tell you with 1,000% confidence that he will not, have issues. And you even still have to consider he could still have a neuralgia, which is essentially irritation of the nerves around that area. He doesn't have to re-rupture and have a re-injury for him to still have complications from it. But it doesn't seem like there yet. So if he does stay healthy, which I think he can be, is I think that's I like that. Dun dun dun. Did I make you guys mad? I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to make such.
No, you did. No, you were going. All gone. But it's good though. It's good. I agree with you. Obviously, I think 4,500 yards was a good number to kind of stick with, just given the volume of what Big Ben is used to throwing, and hopefully for the rest of the offense, that's what we're working with. If you're a Juju or any of the other weapons there in Pittsburgh. So are you a betting man yourself, Edwin? Do you get yourself involved in prop bets?
I want to start now. I did this weird thing where I'd look at props and be like, oh, I think I hit that. Or, I don't know if I take that one. And I look at that, but I never actually bet on them. I think I started on the reason why I did it for was my wife was broke. We were students. I never did. But now I definitely.
Well, that's good, because I don't know if you know this or not, but Thrive Fantasy is a new fantasy app that we is a proud sponsor of the Sideline Squib. And they actually have an app that you can. It's like DFS, where you're picking on a daily basis for a bunch of different sports, but you pick over unders for that game or that week, or and they have all sorts of different sports for PGA, esports, NFL, all that kind of stuff. And actually, it's I can do it better than I can explain it even better than than just that with this right here. Hey guys. I wanted to take a second and talk about our sponsor, Thrive Fantasy, the up-and-coming fantasy sports app where you can take your prop bets into the DFS style. It's a pretty sweet little thing, so make sure you guys head over to thrivefantasy.com or check out their app. Use promo code SQUIB, that's SQUIB, when you sign up today, and you'll receive an instant $20 match on your first deposit of $20 or more. You can download the Thrive Fantasy app at the App Store or on the Play Store by visiting their website at www.thrivefantasy.com. Sign up to prop up today.
Yeah, Thrive Fantasy is something that we kind of came across them. I was super excited, and then bam, Pennsylvania has a $50,000 upfront charge. So although sports gambling is allowed in PA, I was talking to the owners of Thrive, and they're not in PA yet. I guess they need to build a little bit of bankroll themselves before they can jump into PA and join the rest of us. But Super excited for that. It's different. Andrew's been messing around with it from time to time.
Sick, dude. It's pretty awesome. Like, I don't even like golf, but it's like before baseball and basketball were back, I was able to get in a couple lineups with golf, and it was like I didn't even know what I was doing, to be honest. But I was like, okay, over on this one, over on this one. But you do a little bit of research, and you kind of figure out, like, you read some articles, and, like, guys that are experts, like we would do if we didn't know anything about fantasy football. We would do some research and try to figure out if that was a smart play or not. But yeah, it's pretty cool, man. I thought it's a pretty slick app, but I can imagine not wanting to drop $50,000 before you even know if it's yet. So, well, we're getting into the ground floor, so we get to. So what I'm saying is it's not as big as FanDuel or DraftKings, so you have an opportunity to actually win money. It's weird.
Yeah. It's different because you get that prop bet mentality, but each prop bet is worth a certain amount of points, and you build lineups per se with these with this pool of players and player props, and then it's DFS style. So you could join a league for a buck with 500 other players against different prop bets, and whoever wins, it's like DFS. The more points accumulated, the more money won and whatnot, and it's newer, so your chances and your odds of winning are obviously higher, just like when the other fantasy sports came out.
Yep.
It's crazy. Sure. I feel like I know nothing about injuries, and I could talk about injuries with you forever. It's already been 50 minutes already, but
that's true.
I want to make sure that I get this question out to you. I don't know. Excuse me. It's kind of going to be off the sheet, off the radar here. I have no concerns. I know Andrew has no concerns, but one of our writers, Kyle Podorf, if you haven't checked out his work, swing over to sidelinesquib.com. Check out his latest articles and the rest of the staff's articles. They're putting up great content there. But Laviska Shenault, we love Laviska. We love his backstory. We love everything about him. We are not concerned with his injuries. We don't think that they correlate or go together in any certain way. But we're not a doctor. Obviously, we have no clue what's going on. So my question is to you, kind of off the radar, thrown in your face here. Do you have any concerns with Laviska Shenault's injury history as he enters the NFL? From what I know, is he has he played through a torn labrum in 2018 that required surgery at the end of the season. He also played through turf toe, showed his toughness, surgery at the end of the season, 2018 going into 2019, and then during the combine. And you're on your own on this one, but he had a pelvis injury of osteostasis pubis. I don't know.
Osteitis pubis.
Yeah, I was close.
Yeah, got it.
So, what are your concerns with him? I don't think they correlate. I don't think either injury or any injury is they're not connected. At least in my opinion, my non-medical opinion here.
Yeah, all that doctor background that you have, Steve.
These injuries that Laviska Shenault had definitely weren't necessarily directly related. It's weird that they're all connective tissue issues. So they're ligaments or cartilage. So that makes me sort of just raise my eyebrows a little bit. But he had the shoulder reconstruction, or basically the labral repair. He had the turf toe repair, right? And then he also had the groin repair at this point. And that is slightly concerning. It's not to say that he can't overcome it, but it's never a good thing. It's not a good thing that he's had 3 surgeries by now in his career. It's something that we can maybe keep an eye on. I don't think that in rookie drafts, I don't think he's going very high anyway, right? I think that he's par for the course at this point. So would I say that I'm concerned? I wouldn't say that yet, because a lot of guys have, injury issues. There's a 2.3% injury-free game rate in the NFL, so everybody gets hurt. It's an anomaly to be healthy. But what I can say is that, he definitely is somebody to watch. He's not, comparatively speaking, he's not like, let's see here, I don't know, like coming out like Cortland Sutton, who is relatively healthy, right? Or maybe somebody in this class, like CeeDee Lamb. Like, he's not CeeDee Lamb where I have no injury concerns whatsoever, right? He's somebody that you just watch.
Love it. But off of the injury side of things, where are you as far as Laviska Shenault's talent and landing spot? Are you high, low, middle? Where do you feel you're drafting Laviska Shenault if you're drafting him?
I think that Laviska Shenault is one of those dudes that's like, we talked about how Deebo is like positionless. He plays positionless football, or he can. I feel the same way about Laviska Shenault, is that can probably do a lot. I mean, he's 6'1", 227 pounds. He's literally the size of a running back. So the fact that he went to the Jaguars is like, you kind of go like, oh, he went to the Jaguars, but I think that eventually he can be a talented, like a contributing player, an NFL player. Like, I think he's just going to be a good football player. Maybe that's not, maybe that's not a good thing necessarily for fantasy. Cause when I think of a good football player, I think of like Taysom Hill, just like a really good athlete. He's obviously not Taysom Hill, but I think if I were, I am the worst at looking at these ADPs. I don't know his ADP, but like, I think the last rookie draft I did, he fell pretty far, and I don't remember what round it was, but I felt comfortable like taking him.
Yeah, he was going like mid-second, early first when rookie drafts were really popping, depending on, scoring formats and things like that. Right now he's going 102nd overall.
I probably wouldn't have too much of a problem with that.
Yeah, no, me neither. And again, like we talked about earlier, as far as upside and stuff like that. I mean, if he turns into Deebo Samuel, or is used like Deebo Samuel, we know he can be Deebo Samuel. If he's used like Deebo Samuel, then the upside is tremendous there. Well, that's good, man. That's good. CeeDee Lamb's my wide receiver 1, so I love that you don't have any injury concerns with CeeDee Lamb. But Laviska Shenault, it will always be near and dear to our heart. We've been on his hype train for quite some time now, so we're excited to see what he does. And it does suck that he went to Jacksonville. So.
He does, but I think he'll get exposure there. I think he's a day one in the lineup. Volume could be there for him in Jacksonville at least, which
unlike CeeDee Lamb, who's playing behind Amari Cooper and potentially Michael Gallup.
Yeah. So. Well, we're already at that hour mark. I like to kind of tag this together with our sponsor, Thrive Fantasy. So we'll, without detail and insight here, I'll just kind of run through. We like to do a little over/under segment, kind of push this out for Thrive as well. So I'm going to ask you 3 quick questions. Don't need to go into detail. Edwin, over/under total weeks played this year in the NFL at 8. Do you think over or under 8 total weeks played?
Who for Laviska?
No, NFL total.
Oh, geez.
NFL.
Sorry, man. I thought you were about to ask me 3 different players. Over or under 8 weeks played? Whew, that's a good question. Oh man, you're really putting me on the spot.
Yeah, I'll take
over or under 8 weeks. What's that?
I'd take the over.
I take the over. Too much money.
All right, I like it. Optimism.
There will be a Super Bowl. There has to be a Super Bowl.
We might have it in November, but there's going to be a Super Bowl.
AJ Green re-injury. Over or under week 5?
Clarifying question. Does it have to be the same ankle injury that he had surgery?
It does not.
No, yeah, just injury, I guess. Yeah. That's good.
AJ Green might get injured again this year. I hope not. I hope I'm wrong. I don't want to put out bad vibes. I don't want to wish, him bad, but even before the ankle surgery, he had a lot of different issues.
I like it. And last question here. A lot of people, at least in this area of Pennsylvania, think Philly needs to get back to the Super Bowl. Carson Wentz, with his injury concerns, with the way they're playing, with Doug Peterson.
Smash the over, whatever it is.
All right.
Smash it.
I was going to say Philly total wins 8.5.
15.
Oh, come on. They got to go over that, right? They basically, they won 8 games or 9 games last year, and they won the division with like a JV squad, right?
So they play the NFC least, so yeah.
They are also true. But I mean, they still won some games, right? I mean, I think that the talent that they have, they're just too good. I mean, they're too good, especially. They're a smart organization. I think they'll win more than I think they'll get to 9 at least.
They get to play the Washington no names twice.
No, the Washington football team.
The Washington football
team from Washington. And yeah, so I think that's 2 right there. You got. No slight to Washington. To be honest, I think that's a team that will win games they shouldn't. I'll put it that way. I think they're going to win games that like people think there's no chance in how they can do it. But they have enough talent, especially on the defensive side of the ball, to be honest. But if Haskins can just be competent, I think they'll sneak some wins that they shouldn't win, and actually it will end up hurting them long term. But whatever.
Any idea where Thrive Fantasy has the Washington's win total?
I don't, and I don't have it up in front of me or anything. But no, I don't. I would be Washington's probably like It's got to be 4.5 or 5.
That's what I was thinking. 4.5. Too.
I'd probably take the over on that.
I would.
I agree with what you just said. I think Haskins gets a bad rap because he was in a shitty landing spot. I mean, that's literally the worst landing spot you could be at this point, right? Like they're the lowest of the low landing spot.
Yeah.
And I think he sort of gets like he almost gets knocked for that, which is weird. But I think that they'll finish that. They'll when they'll cover their win total. God, I got tongue tied there.
I do think the one advantage of him landing there was that Terry McLaurin also landed there. Like, so it does help a little bit, gives him a little bit of comfortability there. But, and we saw what that turned out to be for Terry. We'll see how that all shakes out for Dwayne Haskins. So one thing I've been trying to do, just because we grew our brand via Twitter, and you're doing a similar thing here on Twitter as well. We're trying to grow your podcast and your website and stuff. As I wanted to give like a shout out, basically, a radio shout out type of thing to a follower or someone I follow that I respect or I find value in, that generally doesn't get a bunch of pub. I'm not talking about Evan Silva or Adam Levitan. I'm not talking about guys like that. I'm talking about like guys that like put in the work, man, that are at the ground floor. So I'll lead with mine. If you have any, it's okay if you don't. But I have a guy that I think he's under 500 followers, to be honest. But he puts out work. Like I swear every time I log on Twitter, which is all day long, there is a new post from him with something valuable from him. So Sam Kelly, or Sam Wise, I'm not sure which one is his last name, but S Kelly is his Twitter name, and his Twitter handle is S_Wise730. He writes for TFFgurus.com and is part of the Dynasty Happy Hour. So if you're listening, Sam, I hope that you're able to find some solace in knowing that people are reading your stuff, people are finding value in what you're doing. So keep at it, my man.
I'll go follow him right now. I do have one that I feel like this is off the cuff. You guys didn't prep me for this, so this is straight off the top of the dome. There are a lot of people out there. No. A lot of people who do put in a lot of work, and I know what it's like to be there. John Barros. I don't know if I'm saying his name right. I've said his name multiple times, but like he helps me with like quarterback stats that I put out about rushing quarterbacks. He puts out a ton of stuff about he works. Well, first of all, he works for SIS, so he has access to all their statistics and metrics. So go follow him. I literally have him in my DM that I'm about to click on. So his Twitter handle is @VerosJohn. That's @VERROS John JOHN on Twitter. Dude's a great follow. Super smart guy. Super helpful to me. So I got to give him a shout out.
Awesome. And I will go ahead and end it with mine. That is Aaron Yackel. Aaron Yackel from the Fantasy Trenches, also the Back Row Green Bay Packers podcast portion of the thing. Great content. Actually, never met the guy as well. It was about 3 weeks ago. We just started talking. He was trying to get into craft beer, and I shipped him up about seven beers locally here from Pennsylvania, and we just been shooting the shit ever since. It's great content to follow. He has his hand in a lot of different his hands in a lot of different things. He's in the Devy portion of it. He's in the auction. He's in a lot of different things, and he contributes to a lot of different websites as well. So there's another one there that is at Yake and Bake. Another fun one there to go talk and hang out with him a little bit. But great follows. If you guys didn't hear, there's 3 of them there. But Edwin, go ahead and take us out. Let everyone know where they can find your work, where they can listen to your podcasts, and anyone else you want to shout out.
Yeah, please come follow me at FB Injury Doc. I do my best to always respond to every single person that mentions me anywhere. If I don't respond, it was probably a mistake. So just literally tag me again and again and again and then I'll see it. And I'll try to respond. Please go rate my new podcast, Injury Prone Fantasy Football Podcast, on iTunes. Give me a 5-star review. Let me know, screenshot it, and I will give you a free injury analysis. That's what I'm doing right now. So 5-star review, please. Would love that. Love the interaction, and that's all I got.
Awesome.
Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it.
Oh, yeah, of course. Like I said, obviously we don't know much about injuries. We'd love to have someone in the profession on. We'd love to have you back on in the future. Hopefully, I mean, not hopefully if injuries happen, but when injuries happen in NFL, we can kind of dive in a little bit more, pick your brain as well. But guys, thanks again for listening. Make sure to swing over to sidelinesquib.com. Check out all of our rankings, writers putting in the hard work behind the scenes. And if you have any questions, click on the podcast tab on the website. There's questions you can listen to if you want a question answered on the podcast. If you want to join the team as a writer, as a ranker, as anything, there are forms on there to fill out. Just let us know. And like always, Andrew, it was a pleasure. Edwin, thank you for joining us. And we will see you guys next week on the Sideline Squib.
Sideline Squib. It's a long time coming. Steve, Andrew, what say you? This is the sideline, Funny, it's my time then. Put me in right now then. Squib, boy. This is the sideline, Funny, it's my time then. Put me in right now then. Squib, boy. This is the squib, info stick up to your ribs. Chips be coming with that dip. Go ahead, put it to your lips. My oh my, that is delish. Victory gon' taste like this. Y'all bought that big old boat, but these boys built you a bridge. Sit down and take notes. If you want you a trophy.